Get out. We wish you were never born. Marin's words landed harder than the dinner plate she had just shoved aside. Veda sat perfectly still. Her graduation diploma rested beside her untouched food, the gold lettering catching the dining room light. An hour earlier, she had walked across a stage and accepted it. Now, nobody at the table seemed interested. She looked at her father. Cale stared back without saying a word. Jory kept cutting his food into smaller pieces. Veda slowly picked up her diploma. Okay. Marin blinked, almost disappointed by the lack of tears. Veda stood and reached for her coat. Then she paused. But before I leave, you should probably know what I found in Dad's study. Cale's chair scraped sharply against the floor. What did you find? Veda smiled faintly. Documents. What documents? The kind you should have hidden better. His face tightened. Veda walked toward the hallway. Cale rose. Veda, stop. She kept walking. You don't understand what you're talking about. At the front door, she turned just enough to meet his eyes. I understand numbers. Then she stepped outside, diploma tucked beneath her arm. Behind her, Cale's voice followed through the open doorway. Veda. Veda sat behind the steering wheel, the diploma balanced carefully across her lap. She could hear Cale calling from the house, but she didn't start the engine. Instead, she looked through the windshield at the study window. That was where everything had started. 3 days earlier, she'd gone looking for an old tax form. Cale had been out, and Marin was busy downstairs, so Veda searched the study herself. Behind a row of accounting books, she noticed a narrow cabinet with a lock. The key wasn't difficult to find. Inside, beneath property records and insurance papers, sat a file bearing her name. She opened it expecting something ordinary. It wasn't. Her grandmother, Elise, had created a trust for Veda when she was young. The money was intended for education and housing after graduation. Yet the account statements showed years of withdrawals. Tuition payments for Jory. A vehicle. Business expenses. Transfers into accounts Veda had never seen. She had read every page twice. Then she'd noticed the signatures. Her name appeared on withdrawal forms authorizing the transfers. Veda knew her own handwriting. Those signatures weren't hers. She had compared them with her college enrollment documents, scholarship forms, and financial records. The difference was unmistakable. Someone had forged her name. She had quietly photographed the documents and hidden copies before dinner. Now she stepped out of the car and walked back toward the house. The front door opened before she reached it. Marin stood there. You need to leave, she said. I forgot something. You heard what I said. Yes. Veda walked past her. Marin grabbed her arm. Veda, please. Veda gently pulled free. I'm not here to fight with you. I'm here to collect what's mine. She entered the study, opened the drawer where she'd hidden the copies, and slipped the envelope into her bag. Marin followed. What are you planning to do? Veda looked at her. I don't know yet. Your father can explain everything. Then why didn't he? Marin's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Veda walked toward the door. Behind her, Marin whispered. You're making a terrible mistake. Veda stopped. No. Someone already made one. She stepped outside with the documents secured inside her bag. This wasn't simply a family choosing one child over another. Someone had stolen from her. Someone had forged her signature. And Veda finally understood that leaving the house was only the beginning. She stepped outside with the documents secured inside her bag. Veda finally understood that leaving the house was only the beginning. The next afternoon, she sat across from Nell in a quiet office above a bookstore. The attorney listened without interrupting as Veda explained what she had found. When Veda finished, Nell folded her hands. Don't accuse your father of fraud yet. Veda frowned. Why? Because accusations give people time to destroy evidence. Documents don't care whether you like them. They just need to be preserved. Nell asked for everything. Veda opened her bag and placed the copies across the desk. Trust statements, withdrawal forms, tuition records, vehicle payments, property documents. Nell studied each page carefully. How long have you had these? 3 days. And your father knows you copied them? He knows I found something. That isn't the same answer. No. He doesn't know how much. Nell nodded. Good. Keep it that way. They spent hours arranging the records by date. One transfer led to another. Money moved from the trust into accounts connected to Jory's expenses. Some payments were obvious. Others were buried under vague descriptions that concealed their purpose. Then Nell stopped. Look here. Veda leaned closer. A withdrawal form carried her name. Underneath it was a signature. Nell placed another document beside it. This is your actual signature? Yes. Same person. No. Nell tapped the forged signature. Then we have a problem bigger than favoritism. Veda stared at the page. I knew it. You suspected it. Now we document it. She continued sorting. Then she found a sealed envelope inside the original trust file. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. To Veda. Her fingers tightened around the paper. Open it, Nell said. Veda carefully unfolded the letter. Her grandmother, Elise, had written that she feared Kale might attempt to control Veda's inheritance. She had instructed the estate attorney to protect the trust from anyone who tried to interfere with it. Veda read the final paragraph twice. She knew. Nell looked at her. She knew what? That my father might do this. Nell reached for another document. There's something else. Veda watched as Nell compared two signatures on separate forms. One belonged to Kale. The other belonged to Marin. Nell looked up. Your mother signed these too. Veda said nothing. For the first time, the betrayal had a second face. For the first time, the betrayal had a second face. Veda found Marin alone in the kitchen, rinsing a glass beneath the faucet. She placed the copies on the table. Marin turned. Her eyes dropped to the papers. The glass slipped slightly in her hand. You found them. Veda pulled out a chair. You recognize them. Marin shut off the water. Your father handled the finances. That wasn't my question. Marin sat opposite her. I signed what he put in front of me. Veda pushed one page closer. Did you ever read them? Marin stared at the signature. No. You signed documents involving my money without reading them? I trusted your father. Veda gave a short, humorless laugh. That worked out well for everyone. Marin's face tightened. You don't understand what was happening. Then explain it. Marin looked toward the hallway before lowering her voice. Kale believed you would waste the money. On what? Your own life, I suppose. Veda waited. Marin continued. He thought Jory needed more. His business. His education. The car. He said Jory was the son who would carry the family name. And I wasn't worth protecting? I never said that. You didn't have to. Marin looked down. We were going to tell you after graduation. Veda leaned back. After you took everything? Marin's eyes filled. It wasn't supposed to become this. But it did. Silence settled between them. Then Marin whispered, There's something else. Veda's expression changed. What? The house. What about it? Your grandmother transferred part of it. To Dad. Marin shook her head. To you. Veda stared at her. When? Years ago. And you knew? Marin nodded. Why didn't anyone tell me? Kale said the arrangement was complicated. He said you didn't need to know until you were older. Veda stood. So the house isn't entirely his. No. It's partly mine. Marin wiped her cheek. I was afraid of what would happen if I challenged him. Veda gathered the documents. You were afraid of him. Yes. And you let me believe I had nothing. Marin couldn't answer. Veda walked toward the doorway. Behind her, Marin said, I am sorry. Veda stopped but didn't turn. I believe you. Marin looked relieved for half a second. Then Veda added, That doesn't change what you signed. She left the kitchen, carrying the documents that had turned her childhood home into evidence. She left the kitchen, carrying the documents that had turned her childhood home into evidence. The following afternoon, Veda sat beside Nell as property records covered the attorney's desk. Nell traced a finger down the ownership history until she stopped at a familiar name. Elise. Veda leaned closer. A protected arrangement had transferred an interest in the family home to Veda years earlier. Kale had later refinanced the property without properly disclosing her interest. So he couldn't legally treat the house as entirely his, Veda said. Not according to this. Veda stared at the address. The house suddenly felt different. She remembered the narrow hallway where she'd studied late at night. The kitchen where she'd waited for Marin. The bedroom she'd been given while Jory occupied the larger one. Her grandmother had known. A sentence surfaced from childhood. Something Elise used to say whenever she handed Veda important papers. Keep your important papers somewhere they can't reach. Veda drove back to the house. Inside, she went straight to the storage closet beneath the stairs. Dust coated the cardboard boxes stacked against the wall. She pulled down an old box marked with her childhood nickname. The lid creaked. Inside were photographs, school certificates, birthday cards, and a small envelope taped beneath the bottom flap. Veda peeled it free. Her hands tightened when she saw Elise's handwriting. She opened the envelope. Inside were copies of the original estate instructions. One page named the person Elise had appointed to handle matters if Cale interfered. Vera. Veda knew the name. Vera had been Elise's attorney for years. She remembered seeing her at family gatherings, always carrying a leather folder and speaking to Elise in a low voice. Veda immediately took out her phone. The number wasn't saved, but the estate papers contained Vera's office contact information. She dialed. A woman answered after the third ring. Vera speaking. My name is Veda. There was a pause. Veda Elise? Yes. Another silence. Then Vera's voice changed. I wondered when you would call. Veda gripped the edge of the table. You knew about my grandmother's estate? I helped prepare it. Then I need to ask you about my trust, the house, and my father. Vera exhaled slowly. I think you need to ask me about all three. Veda glanced down at Elise's papers. When can I see you? As soon as you're ready. Veda swallowed. I'm ready. Vera answered quietly. I've been waiting a long time for you to ask me about your grandmother's estate. I've been waiting a long time for you to ask me about your grandmother's estate. Veda sat across from Vera in a quiet office, watching the older woman unlock a cabinet and remove a thick leather folder. Vera placed it on the desk. Your grandmother expected this day. Veda frowned. She expected my father to steal from me? She feared he might. Vera opened the folder and slid several documents across the desk. Elise watched how Cale treated you and Jory. She believed he would eventually decide that Jory deserved your share. Veda looked down at the pages. She could have told me. She tried. Veda's eyes lifted. What? Several times. Vera removed a bundle of envelopes. They were addressed to you. Veda recognized her grandmother's handwriting immediately. Why didn't I receive them? Vera didn't answer at once. Because they never reached you. Veda opened one letter with shaking fingers. Elise wrote about the trust, about protecting Veda's future, about refusing to let anyone control the money meant for her. Veda swallowed. My father intercepted these. Yes. She looked at the remaining envelopes. How many? Enough that your grandmother understood what was happening. Vera opened another file. This is where the financial records become important. She placed a statement before Veda. The original trust was substantial. It was intended to cover your education and provide housing security afterward. Veda scanned the figures. How much? Vera named the total. Veda stared at her. That can't be right. It is. The number represented years of tuition, living expenses, and financial stability she had never known existed. Vera continued. Your father moved the funds gradually. Some went toward Jory's education. Some paid for his vehicle. Others were connected to his business. And the signatures? Forged. Veda closed her eyes for a moment. Vera reached into the folder and removed one final document. This is a letter your grandmother sent to Cale. Veda read it. Elise had warned him directly. If he interfered with Veda's trust, she would take steps to remove his control over the estate. Veda looked up. She knew. Your grandmother knew exactly who she was dealing with. Veda placed the letter down. Why didn't she stop him? She became ill before everything could be completed. Afterward, I preserved what I could. Veda looked at the files surrounding her. For years, she had believed her grandmother had left her almost nothing. Now she understood that someone had made sure she believed that. Vera closed the folder. You can pursue this privately, or you can recover what belongs to you through the courts. Veda looked at the letters again. I don't want revenge. What do you want? Veda gathered the documents. Everything she intended me to have. Vera nodded. Then we'll proceed legally. Then we'll proceed legally. Vera's words stayed with Veda as she left the office. By the time she reached her car, her phone was already ringing. Nell. He knows you're getting legal advice, Nell said. How? Your father isn't subtle when he's frightened. Veda looked through the windshield. What does he want? He asked me to tell you he wants a meeting. With me. Apparently, he suddenly discovered the value of family conversations. Veda almost smiled. When? Tonight. She arrived at the family home just before dinner. Cale opened the door himself. For once, he didn't look angry. He looked tired. Come in. Veda stepped inside. I'll stay 5 minutes. That's enough. He led her to the dining room. The same table stood beneath the same chandelier. Her graduation dinner had been cleared away, but she could still remember where her diploma had rested. Cale sat down. I owe you an apology. Veda remained standing. You owe me several things. His jaw tightened. I've made mistakes. You moved money from my trust. I was managing the family finances. You used my money. Cale reached into a drawer and placed an envelope on the table. There's money here. Enough to settle this quietly. Veda didn't touch it. How much? More than you're likely to see quickly through a lawsuit. So you're offering me less than you took. I'm offering you certainty. Veda pulled out a chair and sat. Then give me the truth. Cale looked away. There isn't one simple truth. There usually is when signatures are forged. His eyes snapped back to hers. You've been talking to lawyers. Yes. He leaned forward. I raised you. Veda's expression stayed calm. You raised me. Grandma protected me. There's a difference. Something hardened in his face. You think you know everything because you found some papers. I know enough. Cale slapped his palm against the table. You don't know what I had to do to keep this family together. You didn't keep it together. You kept me outside it. He stared at her. Then, without seeming to realize what he'd said, he muttered, I knew those signatures weren't yours. Veda went still. Cale's face changed. He had heard himself too late. You knew. I meant, you knew. He stopped. Veda stood. She collected the envelope and pushed it back toward him. I don't want your offer. She walked through the front door. Her phone rang before she reached the driveway. Nell. He just gave us exactly what we needed. He just gave us exactly what we needed. Veda stopped beside her car. She closed her eyes for a second, then opened the door. What did he admit? That he knew the signatures were forged. Veda sat behind the wheel. Then let's proceed. Within weeks, the legal case changed everything inside the family. Jory discovered the source of the money he'd received for his business after Nell obtained the financial records. He confronted Cale in the kitchen. You told me that money was yours. Cale didn't look at him. It was under my control. That isn't what I asked. Marin entered halfway through the argument. Jory turned toward her. Did you know? Marin froze. Know what? That Veda's trust paid for my business. Cale snapped. Don't drag your mother into this. Jory laughed bitterly. You already did. Marin lowered herself into a chair. I signed documents. Jory stared at her. You knew. I didn't understand everything. You understood enough to sign. The argument continued without Veda. She refused to become the referee. Instead, she found a small apartment across town. The place had uneven floors, a narrow kitchen, and windows that rattled when buses passed. She loved it, not because it was impressive, because nobody could tell her which room belonged to her. She bought a second-hand table, 2 chairs, a mattress, and a cheap lamp. Every receipt went into a folder bearing her own name. One evening, while she was assembling the table, someone knocked. Veda opened the door. Marin stood outside. Neither spoke for several seconds. Can I come in? Veda stepped aside. Marin entered slowly and looked around. You live here? Yes. It's small. It's mine. Marin nodded. I wanted to talk without your father. Veda sat. Marin remained standing. I knew about the trust. Veda's face tightened. I knew you weren't getting what Elise left you. I knew some of it was being used for Jory. Why? Marin's voice cracked. Because Cale convinced me Jory needed it more. I thought keeping him comfortable would keep the family stable. And me? I thought you'd manage. Veda looked away. Marin wiped her eyes. Can you ever forgive me? Veda answered quietly. Maybe. Marin looked up. Maybe. Forgiveness doesn't mean I have to come home. Marin nodded, crying silently. She walked to the door. Veda didn't follow. The door closed. Veda stood there for a moment, then turned back toward the unfinished table. The door closed. Veda stood there for a moment, then turned back toward the unfinished table. Weeks later, the courtroom was filled before the hearing began. Veda sat beside Nell. Across the room, Cale spoke quietly with his attorney. Marin sat behind him. Jory was several seats away, staring at the floor. When the hearing started, Cale's attorney presented him as a father caught in a bitter family dispute. He raised the petitioner, the attorney said. He supported her for years. This case is driven by anger following a painful family disagreement. Nell stood. A disagreement does not create forged signatures, unauthorized withdrawals, or concealed property interests. She began with the trust documents. Vera testified next. She explained Elise's instructions and confirmed that the trust had been established specifically for Veda. Then came the financial records. Page after page showed where the money had gone. Tuition. A vehicle. Business expenses. Transfers connected to accounts controlled by Kale. Veda watched without looking toward her family. The forged signatures became the next issue. Nell placed Veda's authentic documents beside the disputed forms. The differences were clear. Maren was called to testify. She admitted signing documents connected to the trust. Did Veda authorize you to sign them? Nell asked. No. Did you tell her about the trust? No. Why? Maren looked toward the floor. Because Kale said she didn't need to know yet. Jory followed. He admitted he had known Veda was supposed to receive money, but accepted payments for his education and business anyway. Then Nell introduced the recording from Kale's conversation with Veda. His voice filled the room. I knew those signatures weren't yours. Kale's attorney objected. The evidence was admitted. Kale sat motionless. The property records came next. Vera confirmed that Elise had transferred an interest in the family home to Veda, and that Kale had later refinanced the property without properly disclosing her legal interest. After reviewing the evidence, the court ordered recovery of Veda's rightful financial assets and recognized her property interest. Kale's control over the house was no longer absolute. Outside the courtroom, Jory approached Veda. He stopped several feet away. I should have stood up for you. Veda looked at him. Yes. He waited. She added, you should have. Jory nodded. Veda walked past him. No embrace followed. No apology could undo the years behind them. For once, nobody could tell her where she belonged. She already knew. Veda walked past him. No embrace followed. No apology could undo the years behind them. Months later, she stood inside the house she had bought with her recovered inheritance, surrounded by unopened boxes. There was no expensive furniture. No grand celebration. Just a small kitchen, a wooden table, and shelves waiting for books. She had finished the career she once feared she couldn't afford to pursue. The recovered money wasn't displayed anywhere. Instead, she placed part of it into an education fund carrying Elise's name. There would be no announcement. No photograph sent to Kale. No speech explaining what he had lost. Veda opened another box and found an envelope. Her name was written across the front. Maren. She sat at the kitchen table before opening it. The letter was short. You were never the problem. I was simply too afraid to admit who the problem was. Veda read it twice. Her mind returned to that graduation dinner. The plates. The untouched cake. Her diploma beside her hand. Maren's voice telling her to get out. For months, Veda had wondered whether she should answer. She finally understood that silence could also be a choice. She folded the letter carefully and placed it inside a drawer. She didn't tear it apart. She didn't send anything back. Veda closed the drawer and walked toward the window. Outside, the street was quiet. Her keys rested on the counter. Her name appeared on the property documents in the folder beside them. Everything around her had been chosen by her. The curtains, the table, the apartment she had left, the home she now stood in. For years, her family had made decisions about her life without asking what she wanted. That ended at the front door of the house she had once been ordered to leave. Veda rested one hand against the window. Then she looked across the room, at the life waiting beyond the boxes. They had told her to get out because they thought she had nowhere to go. They never realized that the moment I walked through that door, I stopped needing their permission to build a life.